There was also somebody else who had their moment in the courts. It's been a long week, like we said at the start of this, for the Controller of Budget, Dr. Margaret Nyakang'o, who was arrested and whisked to Mombasa and charged in court for a series of charges relating to events that took place before she took office as Controller of Budget. But what happened was for all to see, and a section of members of Parliament then rose to her defense. Watch.
And I want to tell members of the Kaikai Alliance, and I know it's not personal, this is purely professional. Can you people govern? Make sure you use our money well and stop punishing the messengers.
It is clearly an affront on the Constitution of this Republic. And as a community of Omoguse, where Margaret Nyakang'o hails from, we condemn this action.
And even with that matter, it would seem there was differences of opinion. That was one section of members of Parliament, and then there was another.
Anytime something is being cooked by those people who think they have the powers around our party leader, around the president, they always wait for him to leave the country.
That is nominated legislator Gloria Orwoba, distancing the president from what some have said is an attempt to silence her. So first, let's just understand things here. Sam, you did a story yesterday about, just how all of this happened. Because when this story first broke, it was alleged that she was actually attending a function in Mombasa, that she wasn't even arrested. It was hard to even get, the confirmation of the charges, what the story was. But you filed a story yesterday that just sort of set this into context. So just explain to us how we got here.
Right. We spoke to the Control of Budget, and she clearly spells out that she had actually just returned home on Monday night at about 8 o'clock, only to realize...
Home here?
Yes,
in Nairobi?
Okay. Yes, only to realize that there are people that were trailing her in a vehicle who identified themselves as people that needed her to go to the city to record a statement. And the statement was about an issue that had actually been active for some time about a circle that she allegedly runs. And so, I mean, she cooperated. She says that after that, she was required and informed that she needed to travel to Mombasa. And when she was wondering, why do I need to go to Mombasa? And that's how she ended up taking a road trip to Mombasa at night. I don't know if you've done that.
She was taken on a road trip.
Yes, she was taken on a road trip. And
was it on the SGR?
No. It's a road trip. Road.
Oh, okay.
Underline the road.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, well, it's not a laughing matter.
No, it's not.
She gets there at 7 a.m., that is on Tuesday, and after that, the processing that you saw. And remember that time we were getting a lot of information that she's being taken to, I don't know, the DCI to record a statement in Mombasa. Others were saying that she's being taken to court to take plea. Eventually, we saw the pictures, and she wasn't very pleased at the start, taking plea and pleading not guilty. But then again, the most important thing is now the backstory of how she's finding herself in this situation. And a lot of questions have been asked about her relationship with that circle. I think it's FEP circle and Fountain Empowerment Program, I think that's the name. And she says that back in 2019, just before she became the Controller of Budget, she learned that a circle was looking for people to join the board, and she expressed interest. And she was told that for you to join the board, you need to first of all sign up as a member of the circle, and after that you would be elected in an annual general meeting. Her story is that after that she paid up as a member of the circle, 100,000 shillings that she was required to do, and then continued to save up to the tune of about $500,000 in totality of what she owned there. But then she says she was never elected as a member of the board in an AGM, which never happened. But before all that, she got the job of the control of budget. And after that, she says that she informed the SACCO officials that she needed to leave because now new beginnings had come. But now she says that later on, she learned that the financial statement of that SACCO indicated that she was the director of the SACCO, despite having not been elected in an AGM. So, of course, it is her story versus now what is before court, which is a criminal matter, part of the charges being conspiracy to commit fraud. And that is why she's being processed by the DCI, who stay at the Central Bank of Kenya offices, because that's where the anti-banking fraud unit is located. But then again, you wonder, because understandably, I was reading some of the dailies saying that all this emanated from a complaint by one of the SACCO members who had deposited some 29 million shillings, and she needed that money back. So this is money that she had saved at a commercial bank, or rather at a financial trust bank, and she needed to transfer it now to the SACCO. Obviously, that's a civil matter. Yeah. It was taken to court, and the court said that this needs to be handled at a tribunal of the SACCO societies. And then she says that apparently that was actually resolved. She was given a payment plan. But then again, it appears that the DCI and the ODPP were still pursuing a sort of a criminal matter, in which case then if Margaret Nyakang'o is listed as a director of the SACCO, then she may have a case to answer. But her story is that she was never elected to be a member of the board.
Okay, so this raises a number of issues. One, there's usually such a robust vetting process for holders of such, it's a constitutional office, correct? With security of tenure, it is one term, non-renewable, 7 years, 8 years, because she's halfway through her term to, complete in 2027. So there is a proper vetting process that takes place. There is that all too famous certificate of good conduct that you get from the DCI, the very same DCI that is investigating her now, and, together with the DPP have brought on the charges that she is now facing. So what does this say about the vetting process? And also, what does a case like this mean for a holder of such an office?
I think there are a lot of questions around the timing of what we have seen around Margaret Nyakang'o, the control of budget. Because, and you've seen a lot of that in conversations among Kenyans that say that are linking what she has gone through, the arrest and all that, with what she's been doing. Because there's one thing that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 imposed, I call it an inconvenience that it imposed on the body of politics, and that is the creation of independent offices. You see, the instincts of politicians, especially Kenyan politicians, and the culture before 2010 was, you come to office and you have a clean slate of basically restarting the nation in terms of who occupies what offices. But then the Constitution of Kenya 2010 comes in and creates some independent offices. One of them is that of control of budget. There's another one by, like the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. These are offices that come with security of tenure, meaning that the occupant, once you go through the vetting and all that, you stay in that office for a duration of 8 years. And so this is not very convenient, let's face it, for politicians, because they want to work with particular people. What makes it more inconveniencing is when we look at what Margaret Nyakang'o, the control of budget, has been doing. She's been saying very uncomfortable things. And I just want us to listen to some of that. If we can listen to Nyakango speaking at the National Dialogue meeting in the Bomas of Kenya. And she made some very startling revelations.
I have to use a lot of discretion, and I'm also human. When I'm under threat, I have to self-preserve. like you have seen. So you cannot say that if I see this, it's a black and white yes or it is a no.
The exaggerations are in the National Treasury, and let me just give one example. When I was doing the budget for Consolidated Fund Services, this is where my salary is paid from. I found out that my salary was budgeted at 3 times what I'm paid. I am the only state officer in my institution. So there's nothing like confusion there. I'm all alone. So I asked them, why is the budget showing 3 times what my annual salary is? And it was like that for all the state officers.
It was like that for all the state officers. So her salary times 3. You know, the budget shows that the allocation is 3 times what she actually gets annually. And of course, this is a big audit query. And auditors, wherever they go, cause a lot of discomfort, especially when they are independent and especially when they are doing their job right. The Office of the Controller of Budget, if we follow it as designed by the Constitution of Kenya 2010, can be a very uncomfortable office for any sitting government, especially if it gets a straight-speaking occupant like Margaret Nyakang'o has been in recent times. I just wanted us to listen to what she said, for example, about our national debt ceiling.
As of 30th June was 10.25 trillion, which is over the legal ceiling.
We can also now go and listen to what she says about monies that are allocated to defense.
You know, like I said, I insisted that the amount be put in the consolidated fund.
Yes.
Yes.
And you went ahead and approved.
And I went ahead and approved.
Now remember, this is a government officer. She's an insider, basically. She can see the numbers as they move in and out. So, to the political wing of government, this, especially in Kenya, this is uncomfortable stuff.
It is. And, you know, just to sort of, you see what she was talking about with the defense, so she's been, you know, consistent in what she's been saying. In fact, there was a time when she was, at some point, maybe celebrated and not in equal measure, depending on which side of the political divide. I just want us to listen to her raising questions about some monies that were released before the election, which is where she started to say she felt she was under duress. You know, and let's just listen to a couple of those and how, at some point, she says she was coerced into releasing some 15.5 billion shillings. But let's start with the monies before the election.
Sit. I have to use a lot of discretion. And I'm also human. When I'm under threat, I have to self-preserve, like you have seen. So you cannot say that if I see this, it's a black and white yes or it is a no. Even as I sit here, I'm still not convinced.
What's the total amount of money that was approved, that you approved?
This is coming to 15.5 for the 2 billion.
Okay, so just before you come in, Sam, I just need to illustrate all of these instances. So she's talked about monies released to the defense, monies released before the election. This was for, you know, the telecom deal. Then she also talked about the money for the UNGA subsidy. Now, this was from the previous administration. Dr. Margaret Nyakang'o has had a lot to say about monies that are being released for various projects in the country, which sort of sets the stage for why some people say what they do. Let's listen to her about the UNGA subsidy.
On the maize flour subsidy, because on the face of it, it appeared like a noble idea. Everybody could see that the prices of maize flour had gone up. So we were all hoping that the prices would go down. So
she has been, I guess because her term has straddled both administrations, previous and current. So she's been consistent in calling out questionable funding and release of funds, from projects from either side. Sam, this is the person who today, well, at least she's gotten some reprieve today, but has some charges of impropriety for past action.
Right, and I think she may be doing what the Constitution requires of her, but I don't think she has enough friends, especially in the political circles. Because, I mean, she has ruffled many feathers in the line of her duty. And, for instance, if you read the reports that she publishes, or her office publishes, that is, whether it's the budget implementation report for the national government or it's the budget implementation reports of the county governments, and every time you look at those reports, they may appear like the pattern is the same, but there are always peculiar details that you find in there. I think the last ones that we were looking at for the financial year 2022-2023, you realize the sort of, what is the word? Before wastage, what do you call that? Spending so much money. What is that? The opposite of austerity. Yes, extravagance is the word. And you find, for instance, the travel allowances, the travel expenditure. The national government spending upwards of 20 billion shillings on travel. You even realize that certain offices are spending more than an entire institution, for instance, the judiciary. So you find the Office of the President is spending more than the judiciary itself. You look at certain counties. I remember there was actually hue and cry about some expenditure that was made by county assemblies, including Baringo County Assembly, where you find a lot of money being withdrawn, but under one person. You find a lot of benchmarking trips, and she has actually spoken about that you see all these benchmarking trips, but you don't see reports filed of what lessons are being brought back to the country, or really what gain it is contributing to the country. You look at how counties are implementing their budgets. I remember even in the previous term, there are governors that are really perturbed, but that every other time that you find there's a quarter 1, quarter 2, 3 or 4 report, they're up in arms saying that the controller did not factor all the factors that are to be considered. For instance, if you're talking about absorption of budgets, you find many counties at a very low development budget absorption. So partly, of course, reasons were being that the national government is also late in releasing these funds. But there's also been one peculiar thing that may actually put her in the wrong books of powerful forces at whatever level of governance. And that is Article 223 of the Constitution that allows the government to spend money beyond what it had budgeted for unforeseen circumstances. And she has raised the question, you passed the budget in the month of June. How come that the first week of July you actually realize there are things you didn't factor in the budget that you just passed barely 2 weeks before? And these persistent questions, they're important for our country to think about, because we get shocked at the end of a financial year that, oh, we spent so much money on travel, oh, we spent so much money on financing extravagance, or what you may call non-essential activities. But then the control of budget is always tracking the expenditure. Every 3 months, you'll find there's a report, a quarterly report. For instance, even currently, quarter 1 should be in, the month of up to September. The expenditure for the current financial year up to September. It should be in, and you'll be in a position to see the sort of trends that are going on. So I think for such a professional, in fact, actually, I understand that just the other day, I think it's last week, the start of this month, she was admitted as a fellow of the Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And I hear there are 85 others. So she's the 86th. So you can imagine the recognition by the accounting body in the country, a professional body, basically maybe because they have watched and seen the sort of professionalism. But now this particular matter to do with the circle, obviously if it's proved to be if she's found guilty of a criminal matter, then it sets the grounds for really what may be a constitutional process of removing her from office, which obviously I think would require, is it a tribunal? Being an independent office?
Yes, it's a very complicated process. Actually, it's complex to remove a member of either an independent or a commission or an independent office. But rightly so, when you look at the very uncomfortable reports that come from both the office, not just of the control of budget, but that also of the Auditor General, I think, and we had the ESCC chair yesterday talking about corruption, and we hear politicians and political leaders saying they're committed to fighting corruption. But I think the first test of any government really is whether it has the stomach to consume the content of the Auditor General's report or the content of the Controller of Budget report, because they're not very tidy things to hear, because they point out, they bring out wrongdoing. And I think in an environment, where we aspire, keep saying, best practices, these are some of the institutions that are inbuilt to make the system work well. You imagine the absence of the Office of the Controller of Budget, you imagine the absence of the Office of the Auditor General, and you're talking about chaos, absolute chaos, when it comes to handling of public funds. These two institutions are institutions of accountability. And in fact, anti-corruption can be assisted more by how we can consume and act on reports from those two offices, because they show you the trail, and the trail can look really, really, really bad, because it shows you how money is appropriated and misappropriated indeed.
Yeah, and just because this has taken a political tone, as do most things in this country, with some saying, look, this is corruption fighting back, and this is weaponizing of the criminal justice system to settle political scores. We heard from the MPs who were in support of her. I believe even, we heard from Raila Odinga, leader of ODM, saying something similar. But I want us to flash back to what President William Ruto said. This was at an interview. Remind me, were you at this one? It was shortly after. It was 4th of after he took. Yes, shortly after he took office earlier this year. So let's listen to him now, promising that this would never happen under his watch.
If I told you, for example, that already the DPP had been asked to hand in his resignation, if he doesn't prosecute this case and this case and this case, I mean, it was just an ugly situation. And I pray that Kenya never again goes to a place where the criminal justice system is used to manipulate politics. So we must never be there. Yeah, and if there are signs that my office is it should be called out. That's why I am an open book. That's why I want a vibrant opposition.
Sam, you are present in the room.
Yeah.
Yes. I was there, and he actually looked at the camera several times. I think it was 2 times, and said that that would never happen. He would never be the one to give instructions. And of course, I mean, we're not saying that he has. We've actually heard from different leaders, including the chief, what is the name? Majority Whip, that is Silvana Sosoro, saying that in fact the president and the deputy are not even aware of this. And some of the members of parliament, especially from Kisii and Nyamira counties, are saying that whoever is behind this is doing this because the president has not been around. I don't know if it's true, but that's what they're saying. Okay, so we leave it at that. Let's take a break now, because when we come back, we want to talk about money matters, particularly those of the government. You know, where I come from, maybe I'll say this after the break, there is something for that wailing and gnashing of teeth that we witnessed in Parliament. There's actually a phrase for it, but we'll be telling you why parliamentarians were wailing, weeping, gnashing of teeth, and everything, and it's all got to do with money. We'll be talking about that right after this break here on Newscast.